Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is Blue Table Talk. I'm your girl, Deborah Jones. And tonight we have a great guest tonight. We're going to welcome him back, Dr. Lane Rowland. But before we get to Dr. Rowland, let's talk about what's going on here in Beaumont, Texas. We're in our voting season. Saturday is election day, and so we need everybody out there voting because your local election is the extremely most important election there is. I understand that we have rows of people for the presidential election, but we need those same people to come out and vote in the local election because it's more important because this is your city, and you need to know what's going on in your city. Today we had Joseph Trahan out with voter suppression, and he was talking about the House Bill 6 and House Bill 530, House Bill 2293, House Bill 2320, and House Bill 1927. Those House bills they're trying to pass, and it's all dealing with our voting. So we need to suppress our voting. We need to call our councilmen, our state representatives, and let them know, say no to these bills, because they're trying to stop you from voting. They try not exactly stop you from voting, but slow down the early voting stages. And they're trying to not to have people voting by mail. So we can't do this. We got to have this going on in our city, in our state. And so call your state election officials and have them to say no to these bills, these House bills. If you don't know anything about the House bill, Google them, and they will tell you exactly what it's about. Also, then by the way, they were at the Jefferson County Courthouse today, and as you can go back on my page and you can look at the video that I videoed them today on Blue Table Talk earlier about the House bills and about the voter suppression. Also, we always talk about the coronavirus, and so it's no different than anything. So coronavirus is still out there, and we still need to take care of ourselves. We're not out of the woods yet. I don't know, most people think that we are, but we are not out of the woods yet. So if you think you have corona, you can go to Beaumont Urgent Care, which is 3650 North Major Drive, any other urgent cares here in Beaumont, Texas. And you go there and be tested for it just to see if you have COVID. And if you do, you need to take care of it. So you can go to MD Kids Pediatrics, 490 I-10 North Frontage Road, Christus Promptu on Dowling, and take care of yourself. Now, if you want to get the vaccine, you could also go to the urgent care or Christus Promptu. Christus Promptu will take you during a week for your vaccine, but at the end of the day on Saturday, they will only take you there for the shots and everything. So let's do what we need to do to get ourselves vaccine for the coronavirus. So tonight, I don't want to prolong anything. I want to go right into talking about COVID-19 to let you know what's going on. So who would know more about it than our Dr. Lane Rowland, the virologist, and he could tell us a little bit more about coronavirus. And can you? I know you've introduced yourself millions of times, but can you do a little something again about yourself? How you doing, Doc?
Doing fine. I want to tell everybody out there hello. But I hate talking about myself, but I have a pretty extensive background, but I'm an infectious disease specialist and a trauma surgeon, and I'm an expert. I've been doing diseases, biological, chemical warfare stuff for the last 30 years and treating real epidemics and stuff. So I think I have a pretty good experience and knowledge of diseases and stuff, and especially viruses and stuff. And I'm also a professor of pathogen virology in Germany. So I think I have a great will of knowledge to be able to educate people.
I know, right? Which is why you could educate us. Can you give us can you summarize just a few important things that we've learned about coronavirus so far?
Well, I think the reality is that, I think I was on your show, 6 months ago or, almost a half a year ago. And I've been talking about and educating and implementing biosafety and biosecurity protocols around the world. And the virus is doing exactly what the virus is going to do. I think the most important thing for people to understand that this virus is still here and that we still have a long ways in the next month or so. You're going to really see a significant increase in hospitalization, increased death, increased people being sick, because you can look at what's happening in India and Brazil and Europe. And I always tell people, you want to know what's happening in the world when it comes to this particular disease, the SARS-CoV virus. Look what's happening in Brazil. Look what's happening in India. Look what happened in Europe. If they're shutting down these countries overseas and people are dying so bad that they can't even keep up with the bodies to cremate them, there's not enough wood to burn the bodies. What do you think is going to happen in the United States? Well, these strains, these variant mutants are in the United States now. I mean, for example, in Belgium, they have not just, they have the London African strain, they have the Brazil strain. So I foresee, and it's probably already here now, that we're going to have multiple different variant SARS viruses in our population. They've already found the Indian strain, which is a double mutation. They've already found the Brazil strain. They also already found the UK strain. There's a California strain. There's the original Wuhan strain. And this is the progress of the virus being able to be mutagenic, the virus being able to mutate, the population being affected. And at the end of the day, the problem that we have, and one part of the solution, that people don't take this stuff very seriously. People still getting on airplanes flying in from India, people getting on airplanes flying down to Brazil, people flying to Turkey, people flying to Europe, trying to get back and forth. And this virus is being transmitted in individuals, and these individuals become carriers. And that's why we're going to have a continual problem. And this SARS virus, what I call the second pandemic, is not going away anytime any sooner, because we don't have a global uniform policy to effectively try to mitigate and contain the disease, the virus itself.
So you're saying that because people are coming in from different countries, that they're bringing the virus with them? That what
Oh, absolutely. When we look at what happened in Belgium, there was, 25 Indian students flew into Paris from India, and they took a bus to Belgium and they brought the virus there. And what happens is that the individual people end up being the vector, or what we call the carrier. And that's how this disease is transmitted on airplanes, because of our global connection of the world, people coming from different parts of the world. That is why the United States last week put 80 more countries on the do not travel list, and that's a level 4, where if you go, for example, Barbados is a level 4. They tell you do not travel. Peru, do not travel. India, do not travel. Philippines, do not travel. Ukraine, there's a meaning behind that, because you go there, you're going to get exposed, you're going to get the virus, and you become a super spreader or asymptomatic individual. You come back home to Beaumont, Texas, and you go out and have Chuck E. Cheese pizza, and you start infecting people. And that's how the disease is doing what it's doing right now.
But when you travel, they don't. I haven't been on a plane, since the COVID. So when you travel, don't they test you before you get on the air flight to see whether or not you have fever or whatever, stuff like that?
Testing part is one component of it, and that's where you have to understand the medicine and science. You can have somebody that can go to an airport and they test them. I don't care if it's PCR or antigen, rapid antigen test. You might catch that person on day 15 of their infection, or you might catch them, day 1 within an hour of infection. You're not going to be able to pick that up. And so that is one of the hallmarks of where we have the problem at, is that the testing is not being uniform around the world. If you're doing PCR testing is just telling if somebody has the virus or does not have the virus, and these people can be asymptomatic depending on the load of viruses they have in their bodies. And what happens is that an individual goes to the airport, hey, I got a rapid test, hey, I'm negative. Well, guess what? In 1 hour on the plane, I can become positive. On the plane, I could come positive in 24 hours. So the reality is that this is why we have the communication throughout the world has allowed the virus to be able to communicate it throughout the whole entire world because of global transportation.
So you mentioned asymptomatic. How can some people have the symptoms and other people be asymptomatic? How's that?
That just goes back to basic evolution on the immune system. Everybody's different. You have people that, and when we say asymptomatic, what does that mean? That means that somebody's not showing clinical signs or symptoms. Well, and some of the symptoms, signs and symptoms of somebody with the COVID disease or virus means you can have a fever, you can have a cough, you can have diarrhea, you can have body aches, you can be like the flu and stuff. Well, there are people out there that have a sub-low viral load that they don't have a clinical symptomology because the virus is so low. They don't have an infection. They don't have a cough. They don't have conjunctivitis of the eyes. They don't have diarrhea or muscle aches. And so these are always a potential of these folks being the super spreader of infection. And that's why when it comes to children, a lot of people make the mistake that children are innocent, but children are also can be super spreaders of the virus itself because they have such a low immune response to the infection.
So we're getting all these testings. Do we need more testing?
Yeah, I mean, you have to really understand what testing is, and let me define what testing is for your audience, because there's really three platforms for testing. You have an antibody test, or what we call antibody test. We have an antigen test, and then we also have a PCR test. All three of these have a role, but you have to be able to make sure that you understand how you utilize these testing in mitigation and containment of any viral disease, in particular the SARS-CoV virus. It's like me using my scalpel when I operate on a 3-day-old baby that has a congenital defect. I know what that tool is used for, or that surgical blade is used for, depending on what blade I use. So, for example, somebody has, we're using antibody tests. Rapid antibody test is probably one of the keys in the whole process of mitigation containment. The antibody test tells us if you have antibodies. That means, have you been exposed, i.e., have you had a vaccination, and you have antibodies that says, okay, I've been exposed. My body's producing antibodies that can help neutralize the infection or neutralize the virus in the future, whatever the case is. That helps to tell you what the health of the population is. A rapid antigen test tells you if you have an active infection, i.e., somebody coughed in my face 3 days ago. I got an infection. I'm starting to get a fever. I go get a rapid antigen test, and we can test for the nucleic acid on the virus, and we can tell if you have an active infection. It's not going to tell if you have a chronic infection. It's not going to tell you if you have a chronic infection, but it will tell you that you have an active infection. Then you have PCR, which is a gold standard for testing because it looks at the nucleic acid, or what we call the nucleic material, the genetics of the virus. And this is the RNA virus. So we're looking for the RNA. That will tell you if you have the virus itself, period. End of story. You're positive or negative. It doesn't tell if you have an active infection or you've had the infection for chronic long time, but it just tells you that you actually have the virus in your body.
So is COVID-19 more suitable to the common cold or influenza?
No, there's no comparison. That's where people made their mistake at last year, and people still making this mistake. This is not the common flu. All these folks out there that were talking about that, they have no science background. They understand clinical immunology. This virus is much more significant, more infectious than the flu would ever be. And we can define that by what we look at the R0 number. And R0 number is what we call the reproduction number. Well, the R0 number, the flu is about a 1. For every one person, you get a flu. Somebody has a flu, and they can expose a person. Well, the R0 number on the SARS-CoV virus can be anywhere from 3 to 10. So for every one person, you can infect 3 people. So that's why it's very important to understand the significance of the SARS-CoV virus, that is transmitted not just by respiratory, we're breathing it, it's also transmitted by secretion. So, or somebody talking to you and the spit comes out of their mouth through saliva, you can be infected that way. And then the third way, which is probably one of the biggest reasons why the virus is being transmitted in India, is because of feces. And I say feces because 90% of the people in India don't use bathrooms. They bowel movements out in the public. They like that. That's their culture. And the virus lives in feces for 35 days. So that's a significant part of that. And so this is the whole understanding of how the virus is transmitted is also part of the mitigation and containment of the virus itself. If people understand that the virus is transmitted in these different modalities, and you understand how viruses are transmitted, it makes a big difference. So, for example, and I've talked about this on thousands of programs. We've even written it in a book and stuff, that how disease is transmitted, how do people can mitigate and contain themselves contain themselves from being affected from the disease if they understand the basics of virology and understanding how diseases are transmitted. And I call these Dr. Rollins ABCs. Well, we know that SARS virus is transmitted by respiratory. Well, respiratory is transmitted in the air. You can get infected or contract disease in the air, but you can also get it with somebody in your face, and they're talking to you and they spit, or they kiss you. It can be transmitted that way. So that's the R, respiratory. Then we have 7 F's that we talk about. You can get the disease through your face. You can get it through feces, your fingers, flies, your food, formite, and foot. And so if you understand, for example, that the virus can be transmitted through feces, let's think about it in common sense from a biological infectious disease perspective. Most of people in our society like using touchscreens. You go to the Kroger store, you go to Jitney Jungle, you go to your ATM bank machine, you have to touch the touch screens, the kiosks at the airport. Well, folks, these public places are infected with feces 365 days, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, infected with feces. And in 1 gram of feces, there's 1 billion viruses. So you can imagine you guys touch that touch screen with your finger, then you touch your face, you touch your car, your car door, you touch different things, you touch your face, your eyes, you can be infected that way. So these are the different ways that people need to understand to be able to guide themselves through this second pandemic over the next 10 to 15 years, because I can tell you folks, you will be wearing a mask for the next 50 years. That's going to be the new norm. You will be washing your hands. If you didn't do it before, that's going to be the new norm. Testing will be the new norm to help mitigate, contain, and actually show if you do getting the vaccine that you do actually have immunity.
So is that why with everything that you just said, is that why the disease is so infectious?
Absolutely. When we say infectious, what does that mean? Well, I just said this is way more infectious than influenza, and it has a much, much higher death rate. And then we look at the virus itself. This virus can affect every cell in your body, from your brain cells to your eyes, to your nose cells, your cells on your taste buds, to your lungs, your gastrointestinal tract, diarrhea, ovaries, testicles, coronary arteries. And this is why this virus is a multi-systemic, multi-infectious virus that can attack almost every cell in your body, versus the influenza, which has the ability to really has what we call trophism, affects the lungs. This virus has multiple trophism, where it can affect you from gastrointestinal tract to your eyes, etc. And that's why one component of the SARS-CoV virus, people get diarrhea. Well, when you get diarrhea, you're shedding viruses. That's why you can infect other people. And that's one of the components of it. So this virus is much, much more lethal, much, much more transmissible than the influenza virus any day of the week.
It used to be a time when you go to a doctor and you have a cold, the common cold or whatever, and you sneeze and everything, you have some type of allergy. In Beaumont, Texas, we have a lot of allergies out here because of the refineries and everything else. But now you sneeze and stuff like that, you go straight from a common cold to COVID. It's no allergies out here anymore. It's COVID. So we know that it's mutating, right?
Right. This virus is, I've said this a 1,000 times. I said this a year ago, and now people are finally catching up. Yeah, this virus mutates. This virus mutates like every 2 weeks. There's over 4,000 different variants of this virus. Some of the common ones that you know about are the London strain, the South African strain, the Brazil strain, the Indian strain, the California hybrid strain, the Wuhan strain itself, the Denmark strain. These are the ones that you know about, but there are variants out there, and this virus is mutating every 2 weeks. And then what's going to happen is that what I believe is going to happen, we're going to end up having a super pathogen where the virus is going to get in somebody who's immunocompromised, and being somebody that's immunocompromised on some type of immunosuppressive drug, and that virus is going to have time to mutate in that individual, and that's going to be another super spread. And this is the origin of the B117 out of London, that somebody was immunosuppressed. They were getting all this convalescent antibodies. They were already immunocompromised, and that virus is in that individual for about 6 months. and that virus jumped from that individual to another human being. That individual died, and that was the start of B117 out of London, what we're seeing throughout the world now.
Okay, let me talk to the viewers. Go ahead and share this conversation that we have with Dr. Rowland tonight, because I know there's a lot of people out there that have a lot of questions and want to know about COVID, but they think they know everything about it because it's been out so long. But go ahead and share this podcast, and let's ask some questions because he's here tonight, and we need to know a little bit more, because a lot, like I told him earlier, we spoke earlier, a lot of us think that we get ready to go out of it. So we're not, CDC say we don't have to wear our masks, we don't have to do this, they never said we don't have to wash our hands. They never said keep the distance, but they did say you don't have to wear a mask when you get into, not a large crowd, but you like your family and stuff like that. So
But I think people are not wearing masks over the last year and a half anyway. So I think that's a bunch of bunk anyway. But I can promise that I want the individual out there that say that they have their constitutional right. I want you to take off your mask. I want you to go on a flight and fly down to Brazil or India and breathe in the air. And I promise you're going to be in a body bag within 30 days. You better wear a mask, because that mask is going to be the thing that's going to save your life over the next 5 or 10 years. This is not a game, guys. This is not going to go away in 1 month. I can promise you'll be eating hot dogs in July, but you will be wearing a mask in July too. And the fatalities from this virus is going to continue to go until we actually get a hold of it and we have a uniform global policy worldwide, where the people in India are doing the same thing that we're doing in the United States, and the people in the United States are doing the same thing in the Philippines. Right now, the whole policy is disorganized. And it just shows you where you look at India, which makes 98% of all the vaccines on this planet come out of India, and India can't even save itself. And we have to help them out. Countries are helping India out, and they're supposed to be the vaccine place. So it shows you how, viruses will collapse a society, and it will change the outcome of history, because nobody has a grip on this and nobody controls the virus, period. End of story.
So is this COVID-19 will become a seasonal virus?
No, this not to be a seasonal virus at all. This virus is endemic, and that means the virus is in our population.
Yeah.
It's not a pandemic anymore, folks. This is what we call a global endemic infection. What does that mean? The virus is in our population. It's not going, and the virus is not seasonal, because people can get it in the springtime. You can get it today. You can get it in the wintertime, summertime, fall time. Doesn't matter. You can still be infected by this virus. And so the reality, folks, is that you need to understand we have to, have good common sense, great biosafety, biosecurity protocols, understanding the environment, and understanding that this virus is still there and stuff. And I promise you, I hope that if people want to put this to the test, I want you to go to the Dallas airport. Don't wear a mask. Breathe in all that air. Get on an airplane without a mask. Breathe it all in. I promise you're going to be sick. And then when you get put in a body bag, I wonder what people are going to say then. And excuses don't make anything when you already have the best medical and science information, if you listen and follow the directions of people that are really trained in the profession.
Okay, so we've got everything that's coming out right now. We have the vaccine, which we have the Moderna, the Pfizer, and Johnson & Johnson went in and went out and came back, and Johnson & Johnson caused the blood clots. So we're taking two of the Pfizer and Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson is only one. So are you telling me that the vaccine's not working, or what?
Well, I mean, you can look at what's happening in India. I mean, India is a prime example of what's going to happen in the world. I mean, they make the vaccines, and they have, I think, about 250 million people in India have been vaccinated out of a population of 1.5 billion. And guess what? The virus is killing everybody. Everybody's dropping like flies. Doesn't matter if you're a doctor, politician, etc. People need to understand these vaccines are not the cure. The vaccine is not the cure. It's not going to prevent you from getting the virus, especially these brand new mutations. That is a fallacy. I promise you, you can get the Moderna vaccine, you can get the J&J, and you can get the Pfizer, all three of them. And I put you in a room with a patient that has the Indian mutation strain, and you breathe in that air. I promise you, you won't be around for Christmas. That's just a fact. So the vaccines are made for the D614 strain, the Wuhan strain from last year. I understand everybody's rushing to get it immunized. They tell you this and that. But folks, the reality is that, like I've said before on numerous programs, and I teach this stuff, is that I don't care what vaccine you get, you will be getting a booster, and you will be getting 2 or 3 boosters a year for the next 50 years, because none of these vaccines have what we call long-term antibodies, or what we call affinity maturation or conferred immunity. That is a fallacy. There is no conferred immunity or affinity maturation with any coronavirus, because we all get the coronavirus. You get it, Deb, I get it. It's a common cold. Secondly, he calls it a common cold, and we get reinfected again. And guess what? There's no long-term memory. So these vaccines are more of a, kind of a, I would say, a small part in the equation of how we get to the other side. Because I can promise you, you can mark my words, and I've said this 1,000 times, when the Indian strain and the UK strain and the Brazil strain get a big foothold in the United States, they're gonna have to make a new vaccine. And they have to make a new vaccine for the Brazil strain. They're gonna have to make a new vaccine for the Indian strain. They have to make a new vaccine for the South African strain and the London strain. Each strain has to have a new vaccine, because not one of these vaccines, Pfizer, Moderna, and J&J, has what we call opportunist or broad spectrum capabilities or inhibiting of the virus. That is a fallacy, because each of these mutants is really a different serotype or different species of the same family.
Okay, so I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm an educator. So that that first shot, that first vaccine that we took, was just a vaccine, and then they said the second was your booster shot.
Right.
That's the one that either you got sick behind it, or you were what, you got chills, or you something, you were tired. Now after that second one, for me, I had my chills, excuse me, and I had I was tired. I was just tired for about one day, but I went to the doctor the next day and got me a B12 shot. because I want, I'm very energetic, and I needed my energy back. So will this work throughout the year, or do I have to take another booster shot?
Now, you will be taking booster shots every year for the next. You can take that to the Wells Fargo Bank and you deposit that. Let me explain to your platform once again. And you can go to YouTube and put Dr. Rowland. I have hundreds of talk shows from MSNBC, etc., talking about vaccines and everything about the SARS-CoV virus, from Japan to Trinidad and Tobago, London, you name it. I've talked about it to different countries and stuff. Folks, when we talk about vaccine, what is a vaccine? A vaccine is taking the virus, you degrade the virus to whatever it means. You kill the virus, or you make a genetic mimic of the virus, like this messenger RNA. You make a vaccine platform, and I inject you. Well, when I inject you the first time on your first shot, that is really causing a minor infection in your body, i.e., we're trying to activate your B and T cells and your innate immunity and what we call adaptive immunity to try to create an infection so you can make antibodies. So when you come back for your booster shot, 21 days, and we inject you again, you should have a bigger response, making more antibodies, but you should have probably a temperature, fever, body aches, because we're actually, the second time you see it, your body sees the vaccine, it's going to have a bigger response. And then from that, you should create antibodies. And these antibodies are called neutralizing antibodies that are able to neutralize the virus and keep the virus from entering your cells if you get infected again. Well, if you look at most of the studies out there, Pfizer's paper, et cetera, these antibodies usually last about 81 days. So from the time you get your second shot to 81 days later, you can be infected with another virus. Maybe you're affected by another virus, and maybe you end up getting sick, from another virus, et cetera. And so this shows you that there is no long-term neutralizing antibodies. That's why everybody on this planet will have a second, third booster once a year for the next 50 years because of the nature of this particular SARS-CoV virus. And with these different SARS mutant virus strains out here, you're definitely going to be getting a new vaccine, period, because the vaccines that Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson made, AstraZeneca, Moderna, is from the Wuhan strain. They're going to have to come up with a new vaccine for the Brazil strain. They're going to have to come up with a vaccine for the Indian strain, South African strain, London strain, etc. That is how it works in the real world of vaccines, and understanding that magical word that we're trying to get to is called herd immunity. That is what they're trying to vaccinate people for, or vaccinate the population to try to get to 90% of the population. Herd immunity, folks, is defined as one or two things. One, you get 90% of the population gets antibodies, protection through infection, being affected by the virus, or they get it through immunization, vaccine program. And at the rate we're going, we're never, ever going to get to herd immunity for a long time, as long as we have these different SARS viruses out here, because each virus, we're going to have to go to herd immunity on each of the different viruses.
So we haven't reached herd immunity yet.
We're not even close to herd immunity, and I don't see herd immunity happening for at least the next 10 or 15 years, minimal. It might be, we might never get to herd immunity.
Okay, so Erica asked you, do we need to take the vaccines?
Well, I tell people, everybody has to make that decision themselves. I think it's called down to informed consent. I think it's amazing that everybody's pushing this vaccine, but people are not telling you the truth of where we're going with this, because the vaccine is only one small component of it. You still can get vaccinated and die. You can get vaccinated and still catch another virus. Period. End of story. And so this is part of that. And so the reality is that you have to make that best decision for yourself. If I was a person, we know what happened with the Johnson & Johnson. People, right. Clots. They have
right.
a in Vegas has had 3 clots in their brain and 3 brain surgeries, and now Johnson & Johnson got a warning on there: if you're a female, you better be careful taking that vaccine. Why would you take a vaccine that can possibly kill you if you have the information? So everybody has to have what we call informed consent. And one of the things I've always talked about a month ago, because nobody's talking about it, and as a virologist, infectious disease, I think it's very important when we start talking about having vaccine hesitance among African Americans. I think one of the things that the vaccines companies better do, and they need to start doing, and among African Americans, you better ask the question: of this vaccine having an effect on me if I have sickle cell or sickle cell trait? Yeah. Because 150 Black folks have sickle cell trait. So they give you the vaccine, you get a fever, like you said, Deb. You get a fever, that can set you into a sickle cell crisis. Who's going to pay for it if you get sick and die if I have to cut your leg off? So these are the questions people have to ask themselves on the reality long term, is that what benefit does a vaccine give me? Does it make my life better? Am I going to be taking booster shots? And even Fauci and the president of Pfizer said it a week ago, and I've been saying it for 6 months, you will be getting a booster. And right. This time around, I can guarantee you, mark my words, that this time around you will be paying for the vaccine. So everybody out there listening, get ready. You will be paying for that booster shot, because the government's not going to be paying. Pfizer, Moderna, and J&J got hundreds of millions, billions of dollars already paid for. So they have to push these vaccines out there. But when we start talking about making the new vaccine for the for the Brazil strain, for the South African strain, the Indian strain, you will be paying for that out of your pocket. That's just the reality. So I'm just letting people know, get ready to you better save your money up, because you will be paying for these booster shots, because Pfizer is not going to be doing this for free. And the government cannot sustain the type of money for vaccine programs. Look what's happening in India, where they make the vaccine, their whole systems collapse today. Done. Finish.
Some people are paying for it anyway. Some people I guess if you don't have the insurance part of it, because they do take your insurance, it had to come out of their pockets. I know that when I went for a COVID testing, and so check this out, I had already had my first vaccine, and I went for a COVID testing, and then they came back and they said it came back positive. So I said, oh, you got to be kidding. You go back and take that again because I'm not positive. I just had this COVID vaccine, blah, blah, this and that. So they went back and they said it was negative. So when I got a bill on that negative. So, but
How much was the bill?
it was just like $12. You know,
But the point is that
they sent me a bill. Yeah, but how can it be positive and then I know it's a machine. I do know that. How can it be positive and then the next second is negative?
Well, I mean, it could be the platform, the assay they use. It could be the technique, the technician. Maybe they just maybe their kit is not very good, and that's the problem that we have. We have to have a uniform testing system. We have to have a uniform. If you're going to have a vaccine program, that vaccine program has to come with an antibody test with it. You can't have one without the other. So I tell you, say, hey Jones, go down there tomorrow and get a vaccine. Well, you get a vaccine. How do you know in 30 days if you have antibodies? That's what it's supposed to do. Well, the only way you can do that, you have to measure the antibodies, and that means you have to pay for the test. Or Pfizer, or Moderna, or J&J should be paying for you to have an antibody test. So, Jones, you get day one, we do an antibody test on you, it's 0. And you get the 2 vaccines, 30 days later, we measure your antibodies. You got neutralized antibodies, means you have protection. Then what happens, we need to do that on day 30, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months to a year. You should be getting an antibody test to make sure that you still have antibodies to protect you on what's going to come down the road. And I can promise you, none of these companies are going to pay for that. It's going to be coming out of people's pocket. So people need to get ready and start putting funds to the side because you will be paying for the booster shot, and you will definitely be paying the antibody test because the government and these drug companies, pharmaceutical companies, aren't going to pay that because that's going to hurt their bottom line.
Cheryl Chambers want to know, is it safe? And thank you guys for throwing these questions out. I appreciate you guys. Cheryl Chambers wants to know, is it safe to have a gathering at home without masks if everyone has been vaccinated?
I think that's a toss-up question. You have to figure out, what I think. If really, truly, if you're going to have that particular what you just said, can I get together and everybody's vaccinated? Well, I would say 100% if everybody that's been vaccinated has actually got a rapid antibody test and everybody has antibodies. Test says, okay, grandma, big mama, cuz, uncle, all have antibodies, and I would say, yeah, you can do that. But if there's a doubt that you really don't know, and also with these new variant mutations, and you get somebody that comes into your circle, you can still be infected. Even people that have been vaccinated have died. People that have been vaccinated have been reinfected 2-3 times because of the different variants. So you need to still practice great biosafety, biosecurity protocols. You better be wearing a mask and have situational awareness, because some of these people you think that are intelligent, whatever the case, high society, are the people that end up affecting you and end up killing you.
But you know these people. But I mean, you really know these people. They're your family members.
Yeah, I mean, hey, come on, guys. I mean, Thanksgiving, man, I was with my mama eating, potato salad, turkey, cornbread stuff, and sweet potato pie. I mean, I had a great Christmas and I had a great Thanksgiving, and I was with my mom. But we know who's in our inner circle.
Right.
That's the most important thing. These are people you see on a regular basis every day. But you're talking about Uncle Charlie coming from Ohio, and you ain't seen Uncle Charlie in a year. You better make sure Uncle Charlie's has all the paperwork from being tested, etc., before he comes into your inner circle. Because it only takes one.
So what you do when Nook come? You say, let me see your paper. Let me see whether or not you had that vaccine or not. Sure. Let's see if you're positive or negative.
There's whole families that have died. There's been whole families, not Texas, have died. Moms, dads, sisters, etc. So this is not a game. And so people were looking for some type of a shortcut to some normality. Folks, I'm sorry. I don't want to be the bearer of the truth, but you're not going back to what it was a year ago or 2 years ago. This is your new norm. Get ready and get used to it and be able to adapt and be flexible to this new world that you're living in. That's just the reality.
Alicia Wilson-Lees wants to know, Dr. Roland, have you taken the vaccine or will you take it?
No, I haven't taken the vaccine. I'm waiting on one particular vaccine to come out. that I have I'm doing a little, I understand the science and medicine behind it before my family gets the vaccine. It'll be a vaccine I'm looking forward to taking. It's going to probably be in the next month. But when I do take my vaccine, I'm going to show everybody in the world that, Dr. Rowland, I'm a pro-vaccine person. I believe in vaccine because of the nature of the work I've done working in the jungles and doing real world epidemics and vaccination programs to children around the world, especially in the jungles of Peru, from everything from measles, mumps, diphtheria, tetanus, etc. And I know the importance of vaccination programs because I've seen the positives of vaccination programs, and I've seen children actually die from tetanus, babies born that way. I've seen babies and children that have diphtheria choke to death because of diphtheria, not having a diphtheria shot. So I believe in vaccines. So I'll let everybody knows out there. You can look at my platforms. I'll let you know the vaccine that I'm going to take, and you will be the first person to see me take the vaccine. And my vaccine that I take will be real. It won't be a placebo.
So you're gonna text me and I can put it on my podcast.
The vaccine platform I'm looking at that I'm going to take is called COVAX, COVAXX. And I'm talking on television and everything. COVAX, COVAXX. And people can look at that up. And I think that's probably the best platform, on the vaccine platform on the planet. That's the one I'm going to take when it goes out to the general public.
So how long will it take to come out?
I think it'll be out probably the next month or so, next several weeks and stuff. And this is where people have to make the best decision for themselves, because there are better vaccines that are coming out in the next 6 months, the next 3 months. And so if you've made it this far and you've done great biosafety, biosecurity protocols, you should be fine. People need to realize that 98% of the people that do get the virus, they do super fantastic. That's just the way it is.
Right.
Only the 2% of the people that have serious complication. So, for example, there's a drug out there called Noviricide. Novircid. It's the only drug in an FDA-approved effective treatment for Black folks that get the SARS virus. They test it. You take this medication within 72 hours, and it'll keep you from preventing going into the serious COVID-19 complications. That is the type of stuff we're going to have, effective treatment, and the vaccines are only one part of that, one part of the equation.
Before we get to Ms. LeBlanc's question, let me move her out the way. Before we get to, it says many people still compare the virus to SARS and believe the measures taken by government are excessive. Why should we not compare it to SARS? Is it more dangerous?
You're talking about, they're saying the SARS is more dangerous.
Yeah.
SARS is dangerous itself. You look at how you can be infected by. You can get infected with respiration, you can get infected through secretions, and you definitely get infected through feces. Somebody could be in your house asymptomatic. They could use your toilet. They flush that toilet. That virus become what we call fecal aerolized, gets down to 0.1 micron. That virus is all over the bathroom, on the bottom of your shoes. You can imagine going to the Beaumont Airport or Dallas Fort Worth Airport or the Houston Airport, and all the people in there taking dumps. There's no lids on them toilets, and they flush that toilet. That feces is all over the bathroom. That is a fact. And so these are the things that you have to do to protect yourself so much more than just having a vaccine. You got to make sure you have the best mask that you can have, because the virus is respiratory. You can definitely control your hands by making sure you're watching what you come in contact with, touching the touchscreen. Maybe you're getting a Dunkin' Donut, or maybe you're getting some chicken at the airport in Beaumont, Texas, and the person says, well, put your card in the machine. You put your card in the machine, and you have to put your key in there. Well, that finger of yours has just got feces all over it. So there's stuff out there, technology that you can get that can make a difference. For example, like I said earlier, effective treatment, Noviricide. People should have access to that. You can get My Fingers, disposable pads for your fingers and stuff. We're getting the best mask that you have to have that has antiviral properties versus an antibacterial mask. So these are the things that you can do in a reality to protect yourself, because most people have done a pretty good job, over the last year and a half. This is our new norm.
Cheryl LeBlanc says, what if you don't have the money for these tests? Then what should we do? Should we still wear the mask? You're going to wear it anyway, right?
You got no choice but to wear a mask. And people don't care if you don't have any money, period. You're just one footnote in the big footnote of billions of people that live on this planet. So God gave you a brain to think. God gave you the information. So you need to take that information and get the best policies, procedures, biosafety, biosecurity protocols for yourself so that you can survive over the next 10 to 15 years, because this is your new norm. I
Yeah.
mean, if you really want to know what's happening, sit down and stop watching Fox or stop watching CNN and actually Google and look at the newspapers from around the world. For example, I think people need to focus on what's happening in India right now, because India is a
Yeah. I heard
future
about that. Yeah.
of the United States in the next month or so.
Yeah. I heard about all that. Okay. Ebony McGee says, can the vaccine cause numbness, tingling, and upper extremities pain? If so, how can individuals be treated effectively? Persons with and without history of zoster?
Yeah, Zoster's is shingles and stuff, a herpes virus. Herpes number 2. But the reality, the reality, folks, is that every vaccine has the potential to cause multiple adverse effects. One is what we call, you can have Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is you can get paralysis in the upper body, numbness, paralysis of the diaphragm. You can get Bell's palsy, which is facial paralysis of the face. You can get neuritis. You can get encephalitis. You can get neuritis. You can activate shingles or zosters, etc. Each of these vaccines, viruses that you're injected with, can cause these adverse effects, and everybody's different. And that's why you have to be very, very careful in picking a vaccine that you do have, because that's why it takes 3 to 10 years for you to have a vaccine. So what they would do was that in a normal vaccine program, they would take 1,000 people that have sickle cell, and they would inject everybody, and then 10 people got sick, or whatever the reverse reactions are, and they'll take 1,000 pregnant mothers and they inject them and find out what the complication is. They will do 1,000 babies and see if they build up. This is the true science in medicine. And what we did is we've cut through that and we've done a shortcut. And that's why we're having the problems that we have now, because what they're doing now is what we call the clinical trials. This is why these vaccines are what we call experimental use authorization. It's an experiment, and it's not mainstream. Just like they were pushing malaria medication last year and people drinking Clorox. The folks, you better make sure you understand the medicine and science.
Okay, so I'm not going to talk about that Clorox stuff. Cheryl Chambers said, can you take a different vaccine next year than what you've taken this year? I might want to take the one you're waiting on.
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
That's the thing about the COVAX vaccine. It's a different vaccine platform. You look it up and look behind the science. It's a completely different vaccine platform, and there's not going to be a problem with you, getting that vaccine. If you have Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, whatever vaccine, this is a different vaccine platform. So there's not going to be any problems with you getting the vaccine from a different platform, especially like COVAX.
I'm glad Cheryl Chambers brought that up, because I know the one I wanted to ask you earlier. Okay, so I know a person who took the Pfizer. 21 days later, they took the Moderna. Is that, would that
Yeah, Moderna and the Pfizer.
they're going to take the same one, right?
The Pfizer and Moderna, they're pretty much the same platform, use a messenger RNA. So you should have, I really have to peel back the knowledge and the paper to actually look at the science, but you shouldn't have a complication with that, because that's a different platform or the same platform. The Johnson & Johnson is a little bit different. So you have to kind of monitor and make sure that if you're going to go down one particular platform on the initial round, you need to make sure you try to stay within that initial.
The same thing, right? I'm just not understanding why the person who gave them the vaccine didn't look at their records and give them the same one. That's what.
Well, that's why we're where we're at, and that's why another 500,000 people are going to die over the next year. We're going to be at 1 million at this time next year, because it's the debacle. It's people are talking. It's not uniform. Texas doesn't wear masks. Mississippi, Florida, super spreader states. Oregon's a little bit more tighter. You can't have a policy that's all over the place. That is why when they have these effective lockdowns, they don't work, because you can't have one state locked down, the other state is not locked down, or you have mass transportation on airplanes. So to be honest with you, it's really a joke. when you look at the platform, because we don't have a global platform that's uniform. Everybody's doing their own thing, and it's really come down to one word, and that's what we call self-preservation, survival. And he is trying to survive. United States is trying to survive. Every country is trying to survive in the best way they have, and we do not have a global uniform policy. That's why the virus is going to stay out of control for a while.
Before I get to Erica's question, I'm pregnant, right? Well, not me, basically. I'm being close. Okay, so I'm pregnant. Can I take that COVID-19 vaccine?
I think the science is still early on that. I would stay, and here's the question. When we start talking about vaccine, when are you talking about taking the vaccine? We understand that in childbirth, there's 3 periods. You have a first trimester, a second trimester, and a third. I guarantee you better not be taking any vaccine if you're in your first 3 months of your pregnancy, because that's when the baby's being deformed. You're making the heart, you're making the legs. You do that, you're going to come out with a baby that might look like a creature or have a significant genetic defect. I would avoid the second trimester, and I would think if you're going to get a vaccine, period, it better be in the third, when the baby's already is made and fully developed, and then you make sure you have informed consent on your OBGYN doctor, whoever's taking care of you, because you don't want to get caught up into, injecting you, and the baby comes out and has autism or something like that. So you need to be very careful when you start talking about injecting pregnant females with a live fetus in them, especially in the first trimester. So you better make sure you have a very, very frank, what I call a come to Jesus meeting with your OBGYN, and making sure that you understand the significance of when they start injecting you.
Okay, Erica says, should teens age 16 and plus that play sports take the vaccine?
I mean, the question is that, have we done the studies for kids that have 16 years old? That's why all these studies now, and they're pushing it down to 16, et cetera. Guys, we're figuring out what happens when a 16-year-old get a vaccine. So your question to that is, I wouldn't give you a response to that. I would say you need to make the best decision for yourself, because if there's a complication, you're not going to be able to come back. I shoulda, coulda, woulda. There's no excuses when you start injecting viruses and stuff into people's bodies.
Yeah. Cheryl LeBron says someone in her family took the Pfizer vaccine and she had blisters. Should she take her second vaccine?
I would not, because that tells you she has a significant reaction to it. And everybody has an adverse, not everybody, but people can have an adverse reaction to it. So she needs to make sure she talks to her primary care doctor, whoever gave her the vaccine, and make sure that you're going down the right track, because you're starting to have some type of reaction. It means you're having some type of reaction, anaphylactic reaction. So if you're having this type of reaction on the first round, you can imagine what's going to happen when you get the second dose. It's going to be much, much worse. So
if you already had COVID-19 and you recovered from it, can I still get vaccinated with the COVID vaccine? And if so, how long should I wait? Some people say you have to wait 90 days. Some people say you can take it immediately after you finish it, whatever. So how long should you wait?
I think the most important thing is that there's no really a wait time. What you need to do is make sure you go down and get a rapid antibody test and see what your antibody levels is to that particular virus or the particular infection. If your antibodies are still elevated, I don't think you need to get a vaccine. If you don't have any antibodies, you should get a vaccine to see if you can get increasing your neutralizing antibodies.
So if we took that vaccine, how long does the protection last in our bodies?
Usually about 81 days.
How many days?
81.
And so after that, we have to take it again?
You're going to be taking a booster shot for sure, no doubt about it. That's a fact. I don't know where people getting y'all information from. I don't know. Y'all must be getting it from Mars, but I don't know where y'all getting your science and medicine from, because you're not in my class, because I teach this stuff all the time. So I don't know where people getting this. You're not going to be getting it. You will be getting a booster, folks. That's a fact.
So do we go to our doctor to get the booster, or we go back to where we got the vaccine?
You go back to the vaccine people, but they're right now they're trying to do primary vaccination, but you will be getting a booster shot, folks. That's a fact. Actually, whoever's pushing these vaccines, you need to understand what the short-term and long-term strategy is. You don't want them to be vaccinating you one day on Sunday, then all of a sudden 6 months from now you can't find them. You better make sure you have a short-term and long-term strategy.
So people with underlying illness can take that vaccine, right?
Which one? Any vaccine?
Yeah.
No,
Anyway.
I mean, you're immunocompromised. Just keep it real, folks. You're not going to inject somebody that has an autoimmune disease, somebody that has cancer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's why, these vaccines and people that are immunocompromised, you try to avoid these folks as far as possible as you can, because you can make them get worse or they can have a significant adverse effect.
But you know for a fact, that I'm a virus. I'm a diabetic. So what about diabetics?
I mean, depending on where you're at. I mean, by definition, diabetic patients are immunocompromised anyway. That's why you have increased infections, et cetera. Your leukocytes, your body, your leukocytes, your white blood cells are not as effective as it is. So you have to weigh that benefit and making sure that you're in control. You understand what the long-term gain is. And then, like I said, if you're diabetic and you want to get the immunization, by far, if that's what you want to do, and you're informed, get it. But make sure you get a rapid antibody test. Let me repeat this for the 50th time on this podcast. You better get a rapid antibody test to make sure that you know what your levels of your antibodies are before you get the vaccine, doing the vaccine at 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, to make sure that you still have antibodies that can neutralize and help fight off this infection like they say it's supposed to do.
So you get that from your doctor, your regular doctor?
You go to your regular doctor, says, hey, doc, hey, I want a rapid antibody test. And they say they don't know what it is. You need to run away from that doctor because it tells me that he's not an infectious disease specialist.
Okay, Dr. Rollins.
Hey, I did this a year and a half ago, and everybody knows you can Google me and my daughter, Jordan Rolling, the famous individual out of New York. And she said, Dad, I want to do a podcast because all my millennium friends were freaking out last February and March. And we did a podcast and went 300,000 people in 7 days. And I told my daughter, when we started this, I can give you the Dr. Rolling version or I can give you the daddy version. What do you want? And my daughter said, I want the Dr. Rolling version. The rest of this is history. I'm not here to make you feel good, folks. I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to tell you the medicine and science because I've seen the reality of diseases in the real field. And I'm not some guy drinking a damn cup of coffee up in Idaho that doesn't have a passport, has never been out the country, have never seen people with diseases and stuff. And so I'm not here to be the bearer of bad news. I'm here to give you the science and medicine so you can make great decisions on your life based off of science. And so you're not, falling into the skeezy syphilis experiment where you're naive, you don't know anything. Then all of a sudden, a year from now, you're talking about shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Before we give our wrap up tonight, Dr. Roland, Erica wants to know, will the COVAX vaccine be available in the United States to everyone?
Yes, it will be in the United States. That's a fact. I can tell you that, and the vaccine will be manufactured in the United States. That's a fact too.
And they'll come on the TV or news, whatever, and say, the COVID vaccine is out if you want to take it, just like they did everything else, right?
If I was you, I've told people COVAXX, you should go to their website, look at the vaccine, study the vaccine, and follow the information. They'll make a big announcement when the vaccine is coming out.
Right. Okay. So the clock on the wall says it's time for us to get off. I know you're a busy man, and so what would you leave us with about COVID-19 and its safety?
Well, I think the reality, folks, is that I think it goes back to one thing: is making sure you have a reliable source, that you're following the current information around the world, because the world's going to tell you what's going to happen here in the United States. The United States ain't dictating anything when it comes to this virus. Ain't nobody on the planet dictating what this virus is going to do. This virus is going to do what it's going to do because it's Mother Nature. And then people need to realize that there are multiple variants out there. The variants are more transmissible. They're more deadlier. And if you think that you don't wear a mask, I promise you, I want you to go out. I want you to get on a plane and fly yourself down to Brazil or India and breathe in the air. And I promise you, you're going to be in a body bag. You better wear a mask. We call it situational awareness. Don't think you're going to go to Walmart or the Jitney Jungle or Kroger's and not wear a mask. I can promise you, you do that, you're going to get sick. That mask is your frontline protection and that's just the way it's going to be for the next 10 or 15 years. And make sure that you understand what's going on, and have a great mental attitude and be positive, and make sure you create your new world in this new norm that we're living in.
Okay, so I want to thank you so much, Dr. Rowland, for all you. Every time I ask you to come on, you just accept this. So I appreciate you and all the knowledge that you have, and I appreciate. So I want to tell my listening audience, I want to thank you guys for all the information all the stuff that you gave us, and the information that Dr. Rowland gave us. So listen to them, and it's your choice. It's whatever you want to do. So if you want to wait. If you hadn't taken the shot and wait for the COVAX, go ahead and wait for the COVAX. He's just told to be out like in a month, right? Right.
Yeah. I said, you have to get the information, make sure you guys wear a mask, and have situational awareness, guys. I'm sorry, this is a problem that we have, that I can, folks, I know everybody in here has post-traumatic syndrome. We're affected mentally. We're depressed. I want to go to the islands and drink a strawberry daiquiri in Barbados and have a fish sandwich and snorkel. I want to get back into the ocean and feel the water on the back of my neck. But that's not the reality right now, because we have a serious virus that has not been contained because of the stupidity of people that got into the lane that they do not understand virology and infectious diseases, and from drinking Clorox and putting your head in the microwave. Come on, folks, keep it real.
Keep it real. So you've been a great help to us. I know I can call on you anytime, right?
I'm available if you want me on once a month or every 2 months for an update. That's my mission right now, is to continue to educate folks on the virus, immunology based off of medicine and science. I'm not a pediatrician. I'm not an OBGYN. I'm an infectious disease specialist. I don't know why you got pediatricians on CNN talking about viruses. I've never seen them in the jungles, and I've never seen them in the military doing infectious diseases in the world. Yeah.
But I mean, I guess because they think they're doctors, they can do anything, right? That's what y'all do, right?
Well, that's what's killing people, because you got people. My sister's an OB-GYN doctor. She's the chief in Dallas, and my sister tells she's not an infectious disease specialist. And I don't know what in the hell is an emergency room doctor. All of a sudden, he's a virologist. That doesn't make any sense. Where were you a year ago? Where were you 2 years ago? And so this is a reality where we're getting people that are not trained in understanding immunology, understanding clinical immunology, understanding infectious diseases, understanding mutations, understanding the phylogenetics of viruses, the demographics of virus, how viruses transmit, vectors, etc., longevity, trophism, and stuff like that. That is where we made the wrong mistake. And that's why Big Mama's confused, and she doesn't understand what to believe. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask. We have to set the clock back and have people that are trained, understand viruses, and worked in the real world, and not read a book drinking a Tai Chi in Idaho. Yeah.
Okay, guys, like he said, don't forget the 3W. Wash your hands, wear your mask, and watch your distance. Still do the same thing. Okay, God bless you. God keep you as my prayer. If I can help somebody as I pass along this way, then I know that my living is not in vain. Don't forget one thing. Voting is Saturday. Election day is Saturday. Guys, let's get out and vote. Knock on the door and let people know it is time to vote. Get these people in office because of their knowledge and what they could bring to us, not because they're your friend. Okay? God bless you and God keep you. Bye, y'all. See you on top.
Good night.